So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years.
The news told us that blaming immigration for Vancouver's rising housing costs was xenophobic or racist. But now the government is finally admitting that maybe it actually was part of the problem after all. We keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again. We just need to build more homes so that home prices come down. And that's not necessarily wrong, but it's definitely not the full story. Because here's the truth. Rents in places like Vancouver are actually now falling, and they for the first time in years actually. But it's not because we built a flood of new housing. It's because immigration levels slowed down. Now, I know this is where people get uncomfortable. This is a difficult topic to talk about in today's polarized social media world. But if we're serious about solving the housing crisis, we can't keep ignoring this and pretending that we can build our way out of this problem. We've been trying that for years and it hasn't worked yet. So let's look at what's really happening and why just focusing on the supply side of the problem is completely missing the point. So let's start with what just happened. For the first time in years, rents in places like Vancouver or Toronto are actually starting to fall. According to rentals.ca, June actually marked the 9th month in a row of falling rental prices. Notably in Vancouver and Toronto, prices are down about 10% from where they peaked in 2023. And here's the interesting part. We know that didn't follow a housing boom. We didn't just build a bunch of new houses and solve the problem. It actually followed a drop in population growth, a slowdown in immigration. In the first 3 months of 2025, Canada's population growth absolutely flatlined, with only about 20,000 new residents, which is a huge reversal from the 500,000 a year that came to Canada between 2021 and 2024. And of course, that correlation between the falling rental prices and falling immigration isn't just a fluke. In fact, both the CMHC and private analysts have finally confirmed what people were roasted for claiming back in 2021. They've confirmed that surging immigration actually did play a significant part in both the rising rental costs and the rising housing costs, and that it wasn't just a lack of supply that was driving this problem. Now, let's zoom in on BC specifically. Between 2019 and 2024, BC's population growth increased 184%, meaning that we added tens of thousands of new people every couple of months. And of course, the majority of new residents settled somewhere in the Lower Mainland, somewhere between, Vancouver and Langley for the most part, because that's where jobs are, that's where schools are, and that's where resources are. And of course, in the meantime, purpose-built rentals just absolutely could not keep up with that increased demand. Vacancy rates in Metro Vancouver stayed well below 2%. Even though we were building about 5,000 to 6,000 new rental homes every year during that same time period. So that tells us something important. We were building, and we were actually doing a pretty decent job of it, but the amount that we were building just absolutely could not keep up. And fast forward to today, as immigration policies are tightening up and new permanent resident caps are put into place, that demand, the pressure from that demand is finally easing off, and rents are finally dropping, basically for the first time in a decade. So yes, supply absolutely matters, but timing matters more. Our federal government skyrocketed demand without stopping to think about how we would actually deal with all of this demand, all of these new people that came to the country. They didn't think about housing, they didn't think about schools, they didn't think about hospitals or any of the other resources that we all use. We know that Canada's housing crisis is complicated. It's not one thing that's causing it. I mean, you have interest rates, you've got old zoning policies, you've got municipal delays, you've got labor shortage and material costs. There's a lot that goes into this. But we can't ignore a key truth in the matter. Government policy fueled this giant increase in demand through immigration. We brought in hundreds of thousands of new people with no matching supply. And then we sat here and wondered why our rent prices went up and why our housing prices went up. BC's Premier David Eby actually called this back in 2023. He said specifically, we don't have the infrastructure to support these folks. And even back then, he was leaning on the federal government to make immigration policy changes. Rich Diaz from the Luniar podcast actually probably said it best a couple of weeks ago. The dose makes the poison. He made the argument that, take interest rates for example. Low interest rates are probably good for growth, but if you keep them low forever, that's bad. And similar to that, immigration by itself is probably good, But if you triple our population growth through immigration alone, that's bad. Now here's where I land. We're towing a really fine line here. We know that the unchecked immigration over the past couple of years has fueled this housing crisis. The numbers prove that. And we know that supply alone isn't going to dig ourselves out of this problem because we just can't build fast enough. I mean, we've been trying. But cutting immigration does also have its downfalls. You've got possible labor shortages, waning population growth, slow economic growth, and then of course the ethical concerns around slamming shut a door that has been wide open for the past couple of years. Now, let me be absolutely crystal clear here because somebody inevitably is going to call me a racist or something similar in the comments. I am absolutely not against immigrants or immigration. Hell, I'm the product of an immigrant. What I am saying is this. If you want to point the finger at somebody, point it at policymakers, point it at government who fueled this problem, who overloaded the system without thinking about the consequences, and without stopping to think about how our existing resources can support all of these new people that they brought into Canada. And don't let politicians get away with suggesting half measures, especially from a housing minister who, at least allegedly, owns $11 million in real estate. Drop your thoughts in the comments and make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm Angelo with the Atlas Group. I'll see you in the next one.